Hey everyone, welcome to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, VisionRecordingStudios.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And this is the last video, video number 10 of the AudioSchoolOnline.com Mixing Contest documentary series. If you don't know that this is an entire series, and this is the first video that you happen to stumble upon, go onto my YouTube channel, search for Home Recording Made Easy on YouTube, go to my channel and look for the playlist Mixing Contest, and you will see the 9 videos that are prior to this one, talking about this mix for a mixing contest that I signed up for. Video number 1 will explain the whole thing. And this is the last video where I'm just going to show you the plugins that I'm using on the master bus, what I'm doing to kind of pseudo master this before I had entered the final mix to the contest. So here we are back in Studio One, and as you can see down here on this track in red here called Final Mix, this is my print track. This is the actual mix of the song, the final mix prior to any limiting that I'm going to be using, which I'll show you in a minute. So because of the way my rig is set up, I'm doing what's called analog summing. And I've talked about that in some other videos throughout this series, where basically what that means is all my tracks down here are going to a busing system, which we've talked about in other videos. Here, all my busing system is here down here in the gray color. And then from there, the output of them is going to what is called stems. And stems are nothing more than discrete outputs on my audio interface, which happen to be a Universal Audio Apollo. And I'm sending the audio from the mix out of my interface, and then it's going through an analog summer, which happens to be a Dangerous Music D box, which I'm using to sum the audio and send that signal through some analog goodness, if you will, to kind of give it some vibe and some mojo. And then the mix is returned back in, or the summed output from the summing mixer is returned back in onto channel 7 and 8 on my audio interface, again the Universal Audio Apollo. So over here on the left hand side where you see return 7 and 8, this is the summed mix coming back into Studio One. So throughout this entire mix, I've been treating this input as my master bus, and if I open up the mixer, you'll see that all my master bus plugins are here on the return. Okay, so if you're not doing analog summing and you're kind of following along, just think of return 7 and 8 as your master bus, which would typically be over here on the right hand side. Okay, so what happens is after the mix comes back in and I process it on return channel 7 and 8 with all my plugins, that in turn is going to what's called a print track, which is over here in red. And you can see the input of the print track is return 7 and 8. So what that means is as the 2 track is coming back in, the summed mix is coming in on 7 and 8, okay, on the inputs. That is then being routed to the print track. And then what you do is you record or print the mix in real time to your DAW, kind of like what you did in Pro Tools way back when, before they had offline bouncing and all those types of things. So that is right here under Final Mix. So this is the final mix after it comes back in on channel 7 and 8 and goes to my print track. Here is that final mix right here. Okay, and then this is what I would export as an MP3 or WAV file. And the way I would do that is I would just solo it, which will mute all the other tracks, and then I just go to my song, export mix down like I would with any other track. So regardless of the DAW that you might be using, it's all kind of done the same way. Okay, so you would mix down your song and you would just make sure that you solo up the final mix track so everything else is muted, so all you would be hearing is this track here. I hope that makes sense, and I'm only explaining this to you so when you're looking at the screen you're not like, what the heck is going on there? Mine doesn't look like that when I'm working. It's because you may not be doing analog summing. So for the purposes of this video, for now, the final mix is right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute this track so we can't hear the final mix, and we're just going to be listening to the mix as it has been throughout this video series, okay? And then I'll turn you on to the final mix at the end. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to show you what I'm processing on the master bus without listening to the final mix. Okay, so anyway, let's open up the mixer and let's start over here again. We can just kind of do this kind of section of the song here. Okay, we're going to kind of start there. So let me show you what's on the master bus for plugins and how we're using them. So the very first plugin I'm using on the master bus is the Slate Digital VCC Virtual Console Collection, the mix bus part of the plugin. We walked through this in the first or second video of the series using the Neve setting this whole time, and I've grouped everything to group 1. And the reason why I did that is because at the touch of this button, Group Bypass, this will turn off not only this particular instance of the plugin, but all of the Virtual Console plugins across the entire mix on each one of the individual tracks. So you can hear the overall effect of what the VCC is doing to your mix. So let's do that right now. Let's just play back this section of music, and I will just bypass this. And again, what that means is, when I bypass it, if you don't know, if you've never used the VCC before, let me open up the kick track so you can kind of see that. Okay, so here is the Virtual Console collection, or the virtual channel on the kick drum, for example. So when I hit bypass, as you can see, it not only bypasses on the kick, but it also bypasses on the master bus, okay, because they're all grouped and everything is set up to group 1. Okay, hope that makes sense. So now we'll be able to hear the cumulative effect of what the VCC has done to this mix. So let's just play back this section. I'll just turn it on and off so you can hear it.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny. Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear there that it adds a lot more punch and clarity and a little more depth to the mix. Okay, it was a touch louder too, which is not good, so I turned down the output of the plugin just a little bit. The reason why the output is turned up is because I turned down the input when I was doing some gain staging. Okay, so what you hear is, you can really hear it in the drums, the kick, the snare, even the bass guitar. Things just get thicker and fuller and more punchy, and that's what an analog console will do for you, and that's what this plugin represents or emulates. Okay, so that was the VCC. The next plugin we're going to after that is the Slate Digital FG Mu. I love this on mix buses. It's the Fairchild emulation. It just gives a nice sweetness, and what you're going to see is I'm only compressing maybe a dB or so. I'm using excuse me, a preset called Glue that I just kind of tweaked, and I'm using maybe 1 dB. We'll see it in a second, and then the makeup gain is turned up about 1 dB. And this is what we get, and I'll turn it on and off by turning on and off the power button so you can hear what it does. So here's with it on, and I'll turn it off halfway through the passage.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny. Oh, I'll try.
Okay, so again, it just breathes a bunch of life into the mix, gives it a lot more richness and a lot more just polish, I guess is the best word. Again, we're only compressing a dB, right? Just kissing the needle, and our makeup gain is at 1.1 dB. So we're not really turning up the volume. It's just doing something really sweet this compressor does to audio signal, which I love. From there, we're going over to another instance of the virtual mix rack, and we're using a plugin called Revival by Slate Digital. Now, this is kind of like a sonic maximizer. It really only has 2 buttons on it, or 2 knobs. It has a thickness for low end and a shimmer for top end, and this is just to add a little more beef and a little more sparkle at the top. That's really about it. It's pretty subtle, and the thing is with this plugin, it's a free plugin if you have the virtual mix rack by Slate Digital. I don't use this on every mix, but this mix I felt like it needed it. You don't want to overuse this. You want to be really careful. It's really easy to really crank this thing up and it sounds great. And then, you come back a day later and listen to the mixing and you go, wow, that was way too much. And you just want to use this very sparingly because you don't want it, you want it to be subtle. So I'm going to turn it off here and then I'll, pop it in halfway through the passage and you'll hear what it kind of does.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny.
Okay, it's really subtle. It's really here more on the low end than you do on the top end. A little bit more oomph to the kick drum, which is what I wanted. Okay, again, it's a little subtle thing, no big shakes, but just adds a little bit, a little more salt to the soup, if you will. Okay, and then we're going over there to the Virtual Tape Machine by Slate Digital. Again, just to give it some nice mojo. So here we go.
Oh, I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny.
Again, just a little bit of extra. Again, it's very subtle. Again, all these plugins, especially on the master bus, and for that matter, throughout this entire mix, everything I'm doing, if you haven't caught on yet, go back and watch the series, is subtle. The only thing that we're doing in any kind of extreme is parallel compression, but that's on purpose. All the other things we're doing with EQ and compression throughout this entire mix, it's just subtle. It's subtle. Every one of these little subtle things add up accumulative to a major effect on a mix. Okay, so this tape machine just adds a little bit more something. So hopefully you can hear that. If you're listening to this on a good set of headphones or studio monitors, you'll be able to hear the difference. And then lastly, I went ahead and I threw an EQ on the very end of this mix. And I don't always do this, but I still felt like there was a little bit of cloudiness around the mix. And a quick way to fix that is to put an EQ at the very end. And if you want to get some clarity, you want to take out 500 hertz, about 3 dB, just a little bit of a dip to kind of get rid of some of the middle build up there. And then I put a little bit of a shelf at the top here, about 2 dB at 4K, just to bring in a little brightness. I'll turn this off and I'll turn it on in the middle. You'll hear what I mean. Listen to the mid-range especially. Here's before.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me.
Okay, it has a lot of clarity. Just by that little 500 hertz dip makes a lot of clarity. Oh, and by the way, at 29 hertz, or I meant to be at 30 hertz, I rolled off the very bottom end as well, just to clean things up, because this had a lot of buildup in it, in my mind. And instead of going back and tweaking every single track, I just threw an EQ on the end. Again, 3 dB out of 500 hertz, a little bit of a shelf, 2 dB at 4K, and a roll off at 30 hertz, 29 hertz, exactly. And again, before.
Oh, I'll try, but then I'll deny.
Great little trick, and it's an instant way to add some clarity to your mix, is just by this little dip at 500. Okay, so that was the final process. So that is the final mix here for this song. So then what I did was I would put this final mix in record mode, and I would just record the track in real time. And here is the final mix. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to solo this up so you can't hear all the individual tracks. All we're going to hear is what the final mix is, at least what I feel like the final mix will be. And this will be posted. This is already posted on my Facebook page. You can go out to my Facebook page, Home Recording Made Easy, and you can check it out. You can also head over to my Vision Recording Studios Facebook page, and the final mix is there as well, the kind of mastered version. Okay, so if you look, okay, and we're going to play a part of the final mix here for you. Now, what you'll see is, again, as I said earlier, I would now mix this track out. This would be the MP3 of the WAV file. But prior to that, I want to do a little bit of mastering. So on the master bus, the DAW master bus over here, you'll see I have a couple of plugins. Okay, I have a couple of sweetener plugins to kind of take this mix, because this mix is going to run through this main output, and I'm going to put a couple more plugins on it. Kind of a mastering session. Instead of going to the mastering page here in Studio One, because I'm only doing one song, I do my mastering right on this main output. If I was doing multiple songs, obviously I would send each one of those as WAV files to the mastering or the project page, but I don't need it for this particular project because we're only dealing with one song. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is take a look at this master fader before I turn on any of these plugins, or you can look at the return 7 and 8, and you can see the level of this mix. We're at around a -6, -7 dB, which is where you want to be before you go into mastering. And then what I'm going to do at the mastering quote unquote stage is I'm just going to add a little bit of a stereo widener, and I'm going to add a limiter to kind of bring it up to commercial level volume. So when I send this song into the mixing contest, it's not 7 dB too quiet. Okay, I want to give them a final product as best as possible. Some people will call that mastering. That is a form of mastering, but it's only really one part of mastering. But for argument's sake, for this tutorial, let's just say that I mastered the song here on the master bus here, if that makes any sense. So let's keep our eye on the needle here, because all these plugins are turned off, and I'll show you one at a time what I did. Let's listen to part of this mix. And watch where it kind of peaks here on the meters.
Maybe it's a matter of we're animals, it's natural. Maybe it's a matter of reacting to so close to touch. Your touch sets me on fire, and fires, they grow. The future just gets brighter, much brighter when you're close.
Okay, so you can see that during those that real canon kind of a sound that's only placed in a few different parts of the song, it kind of peaks out at around a -4 dB, which is a little loud because that track is a little loud in the mix because it's an effect that I felt like needed to be there. But the rest of the track you'll see is around -7, -8 dB, which is where we want to be.
Nothing I could do is ever good enough for you. I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I tried.
Okay, around -6, -7. Now when we get to the chorus, it's going to be a bit louder, and what I can do is I can turn it down on this track here if it's a little too loud. Okay, around -4. It's a little loud because we have the chorus kicking in, all the instrumentation is kicking in. I want this to be somewhere around a -5, -6. So I have plenty of headroom left at the mastering stage to add some compression and some limiting. So I'm just going to turn this down a little bit, maybe just a couple of dB, maybe 3 dB. Okay, so I turned it down 2.6 dB, and now I'm right around a -7, which is where I want to be. Okay, so that is the level of the final mix prior to mastering. Okay, and again, I talk a lot about that in some of the Made Easy products, so you can check those out if you want to learn more about what I'm talking about. So let's go over to the master bus and show you what I did. So the very first plugin I use on all of my mixes is I use this plugin by Universal Audio called the K-Stereo Ambience Recovery. Some people will think of this as a stereo widener, but it really isn't a stereo widener. It's complex to explain what it does, but basically what it does is it adds in some of the ambience that we've lost when we mix this down to a 2-track. And it kind of gives the mix a little bit of a lift and kind of a push out left to right to give it a little bit more space and a little bit more width. Okay, the thing about it, you can use a stereo widener to kind of get the same effect, kind of, sort of, but the problem with stereo wideners is you have to be really careful. You don't want to overuse them because then things start to sound phasey and start to sound weird. This is a subtle effect. So if you're not listening to this on a good set of studio headphones or in your control room listening to this on monitors, you may not hear the effect of this, okay? So right now it's off. I'm going to kind of put it back to the verse with the least amount of stuff going on so maybe you can hear it. So I'm going to turn this on, and what you're going to hear is listen for the reverb to kind of get a little bit more pronounced, and the whole mix kind of lifts up and pushes out left and right, if that makes sense. Let me just play it, and you can hear what I mean.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away. I could barely make a memory that I want to keep without you near me. Oh, I tried, but then I'll deny. Oh, I'll try.
Okay, so I don't know how well you can hear it. Again, it's very subtle, but what I hear is I hear the vocal especially. It almost seems like things get out of the way of the vocal, and the vocal's a little bit more towards the center, and the instrumentation's kind of pushing off to the left and right. So it gives the vocal a little bit more focus, a little more clarity, and it kind of lifts the mix up. It gives it just a little more space. It's very subtle. This is a great plugin because it just adds that, again, just like I said a few minutes ago, it adds a little bit of secret sauce or a little bit of salt to the mix without being obvious. You would never know that this plugin was here if I wasn't pointing it out, okay? It doesn't sound like there's anything being processed. It just sounds right to me, okay? So that's the K Stereo, the Precision K Stereo by Universal Audio. Great plugin. If you're a Universal Audio user, I highly recommend you check this plugin out. It's a great plugin, and it really does make a difference. From there, I think I was experimenting, with a Pro EQ. And I was just, again, rolling off just the very low end, around 24 hertz, because we have that canning kind of a kick drum in the middle of the song where you've heard it throughout, in different spots, just to kind of, again, get rid of all that bottom end. A lot of times, even though I already did this on the master bus, at the end of the mix at the mastering stage, I'll typically always put an EQ on and just roll off the super low end that we don't need, just to make sure we've captured everything. So you're not really going to hear much of a difference here. But you can see we have some buildup down here.
I could barely make it through the day without fear in my heart would send you away.
Okay, if you listen to the kick drum, just the kick drum, if you can focus on the kick drum, turn up your studio monitors or your headphones a little bit and just listen to the very kick drum. It kind of cleans it up a little bit. It's a little bit thuddy, and this kind of cleans it up. Now, again, it's a matter of taste. Do you want it a little bit thicker, a little deeper, or do you want it a little less? I mean, it really depends. Very, very subtle. You can go either way with this, whether you want it there or not. But I rolled it off. I kind of like it a little bit better. Okay, and then the last plugin I use on the post, I'm using the Slate Digital, the FGX mastering compressor limiter. This is a great plugin. So it's two plugins in one. It has a compressor at the top and it has a limiter at the bottom. So I'm not going to go through how you use this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off so you don't hear the volume spike for now. So this is just listening to the compressor. And again, I'm doing a barely, what am I doing here? Barely a 1:2 ratio. I mean, it's very, very subtle what we're doing here. And you'll see the needle, we're barely kissing it. Probably turn up the threshold a little bit. So it's really kind of catching more of those cannon hits a little bit, just very subtle, just kissing the needle. And then from there, I'm going to the limiter and I'm trying to bring this up. So at the end of the day on these meters down here that we have somewhere around a -10 dB RMS level. Okay, that's kind of where we want to end up. So if you take a look again, right now it's off. So what I want you to do now is I want you to turn down your studio monitors or turn down your headphones, because I'm going to add some gain into this, okay, to kind of put the final volume on here. Okay, so go ahead and turn down your stuff, so I don't want to blast your ears. And I'm going to do the same here. Okay, so you ready? So what we're going to do is, if I unclick this constant gain monitoring button, when it's in, you're not listening to the limiter, you're only listening to the compressor. When I take this out, you're going to hear the volume jump, okay? So again, let's look at where we are on the meters down here without the gain being added. Let's go to the chorus, because that's where we kind of want the loudest point of the song. Where are the green meters kind of falling on the scale here? Okay, around -13, -14. I want that to be somewhere around a -10. That's a good healthy level for a master. Now again, you could go back and forth on how loud do you want to make it? Do you want to make it as loud as possible without clipping? The loudness wars, blah, 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 blah. I try to keep my RMS level of a final mix somewhere around the -10 dB. Not too much louder because I don't want to squash the life out of everything. I want it to still retain dynamics, but I want it to be loud enough so it can compete with a commercial recording. And again, a lot of it depends on the style of music and so on and so forth. And again, this is not going on the radio. This mixes in a mixing contest. So I just want it to be loud enough so it sounds like a master. Whether it's loud enough or a little too loud for this style of music, compared to what's being released commercially, I don't really care for this particular demonstration, okay? But if you use the golden rule of around a -10 dB, like -10, -11 RMS will give you a peak of somewhere around the -1, -0.5 dB. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this button and it's going to get louder. So again, turn down your stuff, okay? That's how much gain reduction, how much gain we've added. This is before. Okay, at the loudest points, around a -10, -11. So we added about 6 dB of gain to this, okay? So that's how I kind of mastered it and said, okay, I put a little EQ, a little bit of stereo widening, a little bit of limiting, brought up the levels to a healthy level. And that is how I kind of sent out. Then from there, I would now just go to audio mixdown, mix this out as a WAV file or an MP3 and send it off and have it submitted. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, and I hope that was helpful. And thank you so much for joining me for this 10-part video series on how I mix this song for this contest. Some of you might have participated in the contest as well. Some of you are watching this video long after the contest has expired. And again, go back to the first video of this series, video 1, where I talk about the contest, why I joined it, and why I think it's a good idea for you to kind of get involved in these kinds of things if you're a mixing engineer or an aspiring mixing engineer, whether you're doing it on your own music or you're doing it for clients, or whether you want to take it from a hobby to a profession one day. It's like learning an instrument. The more you practice your mixing and you practice these sort of things, the better you're going to get. It's no different than learning how to play a piano or a guitar or drums or anything else. Practice makes perfect. And I'm continuing even to this day, after I've been doing this for nearly 18 years. I'm always still trying to learn and get better, and I like to push myself and get involved in these types of things because it makes me, kind of hones my skills and make sure I don't lose anything along the way. If anything, I hope I get better as well. So thanks for joining me for this series. And again, for more tips, tricks, concepts, and training around everything home recording, be sure to head out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com and also go out to YouTube and search for Home Recording Made Easy and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. There is nearly 200 videos on that channel, and it's growing all the time. I'm doing anywhere from 50 to 75 videos a year. Again, doing everything from product demonstrations on new gear and stuff that may help you in your home studio, as well as things like this series. Again, to give you some free training and to just try to help and give back. And also go out to Facebook, search for Home Recording Made Easy. And check me out on Facebook. Give me a like if you would. Again, I'm always posting stuff up there on a daily basis, giving you things to think about, turning you on to new products, turning you on to new concepts and techniques once again, to help you in your home studio. So until the next video, this has been David with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. Again, thank you so much for joining me for this particular video series, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.